Okay, so tonight I'm working on getting my wiring together, and I figured I'd make a video. So step one is lay out your parts. This is the best part. It's kind of like Christmas. And so what we have is a autometer tach, volts, oil temperature, cylinder head temperature, and oil pressure. They're accompanying light bulbs. We're going to change it to a push button start with a kill switch and an on light. Whole bunch of wires. We're putting in an electric fuel pump relay to accompany that. I'm going to put in a new fuse block, but we'll get to that. These are the senders for those gauges that you just saw: oil pressure, oil temperature, let's see, cylinder head temperature, and the volt doesn't have a sender because it's just a voltmeter. This is the fan relay, and that's going to turn on and off this Durali oil cooler fan, and it's only got 2 wires, but it's going to have more. We're also going to be putting in the MSD6T spark controller. It's got a half dozen wires with it, and the Blaster 3. Now, as I've panned around, you've noticed that all these have the wiring schematics with them. Pretty important, because the very next thing that we're going to do, which is going to be step 2, is to make our own schematic so that we don't miss things. So, step 2, draw your plan. Alright, so in the plan, I drew every component, the tach and the wires coming off of it, the lights, that's what these are, and some ground and switched 12 volts, and then each of the gauges: volts, cylinder temperature, oil temperature, and oil pressure, and then a bunch of other things. But we started with these and drew the colors: green, red, white, black, off of the tach, and then we used the spec sheet to write out what they went to. So in this case, MSD terminal is going to be on the other side, and that was the green wire. Red wire to 12 volts switched, white wire to 12 volts switched, that's the S, black wire to ground, and that's the ground symbol right there. So volts, and all these would do the same thing, and then what I did was I called these sender, because they all go back to a sender that's going to give the value to these gauges. Alright, so then I moved on to the fuel pump. That's FP right there. It's got a black wire to ground, a brown wire to 12 volt power, and then the fuel pump relay adds some extra wiring. There's a red line that goes to 12 hot, and it has a circuit breaker. A purple line that goes to 12 volt power source for the fuel pump, so that one gets joined to the brown. And then gray to ground, yellow goes to a switch or maybe the fuse block, so I haven't decided. But by doing this, I came to the conclusion I might have to. Then we drew out the switch, this kill switch, and the push buttons, and the run light, and went through some of the wiring for that. There's a wire that's going to go back to positive coil, wire back to positive solenoid, and then some of the other wiring, ground, little jumper wire, red to the light, 12 hot from somewhere, or maybe a 12 volt switch. I haven't decided, but we'll figure that out. Alright, so I drew this dotted line to indicate the front of the car, which would be the dash, the back of the car, which would be the engine compartment. So what you've got here is the lines coming across that's going to tach, and then each of the senders: cylinder, oil temp, oil pressure. Line coming across the positive coil, line coming across the positive solenoid, and then we started working on some other stuff. Alright, so oil cooler had some similar wiring for the fan relay. The only thing different was the gray wire goes to the oil temp thermistor, and then everything else was similar, and one wire is going to go back across to the front to another switch, so I can turn the fan on and off if I want to. like during the winter when it's cold, maybe I won't need it. Anyway, so here's that line from the tack coming down, and then it's going to get joined into the MSD. It has a tack terminal on it. So heavy black goes directly to a good ground or battery negative, heavy red, 12 positive. Anyway, you get the idea. So what was good about this is I realized that on the MSD there's this thing, and when I was reading it, this violet green may or may not go to the Protronics igniter. So by laying this out, I figured out a problem before I got to it. So with all this laid out, I've got my coil here, kind of looked at some of the wiring and things like that. I went back here and I decided, alright, step 3 is going to be write your inventory. So I did the front side inventory, 12 switched, and I counted them up over here. 12 switched ended up being 12 to 15. Haven't decided because I may use 12 hot as switched or not, and I'm not sure yet. But again, I identified it before I got to it. How many grounds? How many sender, tack, coil? Okay, those are things going back across. That's 8. 1 coming back from the fan relay. That's 9. That's great because that's going to tell us how many wires I need to build into my harness to go from the back to the front and vice versa. Anyway, so that's what we've done tonight, and we'll do some more later.